Hello, 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 and welcome to our extended disc mini webinar. Today we will be wrapping up our four-part series focusing on each of the disc styles. And last but definitely not least, we're going to be covering C styles. We're titling it today, Why Your Message to C Styles May Not Be Effective. We start with the why question, and you'll learn why as we go on. But it is being recorded, and so if you missed any of it or you want to share it, you'll find it on our YouTube channel. Just look for Extended Disc North America, and let's see what else. Questions. We love your questions, but we may not have time for them live. But go ahead and put them in the Q&A section, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. My name is Christina Bowser, and I am the training director here at Extended Disc. And joining me today for our last and best webinar of 2020, Wilma Stevens. Hey, Wilma.
Hey, Christina. Thank you for inviting me. And yes, best webinar of the year.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk a little bit. For any of you, let me just preface it by, for any of you that have missed D, I, or S webinars that came previously, you will also find that on our YouTube channel. So let's talk a little bit about C styles, Wilma.
Well, we know the C style is the most analytical style of the four styles. They sit on our diamond in that upper left-hand quadrant, and the color that represents them is that cool blue. We would describe them as really analytical, logical, can be quiet, a little more reserved. They're just taking it all in, formal, careful. And I think if I had to pick one word that I was going to describe a C with, it would be perfectionist, right? Our C's like things to be done correctly. Like if we don't have time to do it correctly, do we have time to do it again? So when we communicate with the C, you will observe that they're really diplomatic, right? A little bit more formal, and they focus on the details, and they like things logical, right? Their preferred environment is to have structure and to be organized. They are most comfortable when they have time to focus and time to prepare. So if you were thinking of organizing a surprise birthday party for your C friend, don't bother. They do not like surprises. Under pressure, when our C styles feel that pressure bearing down on them, what can happen to them is we know that they are into the details, right? Invariably, they are the ones that find the mistakes. And as a result, they can get a little critical. Right? Other styles might find them hypercritical. So under pressure, we say they're overcritical, because when they find a mistake, that's not okay. They can't go, oh, hey, let's let it ride. No, we are going to fix this because we're going to do it right. And of course, their fear is criticism of their own work. They want to produce high quality work. They don't want to mail it in. They want to get it right. And their fear is, what? I made a mistake? And remember, they drag those mistakes with them, right? If they make a mistake, it's like extra baggage. They're not very forgiving of their own mistakes. What else would you add to the overview, Christina?
You know, I think when you think about C styles, they are, as Wilma said, perfectionists. They set very high standards for themselves. And in fact, we say there's no harsher critic of that C style than the C style themselves. They are very hard on themselves. But I just want, it just reminds me that as Wilma was talking about these descriptors, remember, these are words that we who observe other styles use these words to describe them. And also the words that we use to describe people are based on our own perception, right? So some of us might have this negative connotation that is associated with the word perfectionist. But, you know, for a C style, that's what they're shooting for. That's what they want to be, right? They want to be perfect. And to
Or they
be
want to
reserved,
get it perfect.
exactly.
They want to get it perfect.
Or to be quiet or reserved. That's not a negative thing for them. You know, for some of us, we might say, you know, oh gosh, you know, C styles tend to be kind of timid. They don't speak up, you know, they're pretty quiet and reserved. But that's a very comfortable thing for them. And for C styles, they don't see that necessarily as a negative, whereas some other styles may. So that was the only thing. I do want to mention that, you know, it's fun to talk about the C styles in terms of our animated videos that we have. And so this is Carol, and she is our C style. And if you want to meet Carol, you can go to our extendeddisc.org website and look for the disc training videos. And there's an animated individual for each of the disc styles.
But we always need Carols, right? We need the Carols in the world. And it's so funny. One of my dearest friends' name is Carol, and she is the poster child for C styles, right? She gets it right. And that's important to her to do it right, to get it right.
Right, and C styles are the ones that often take the time, you know, to write out the emails in detail, or takes the time to really try to understand the processes and the products. So I always jokingly say, you know, when we're like, oh my God, it's broken, how do I fix this? Or I don't know what to do next. Who do we typically go to? We typically go to our C style colleagues, because they have taken that time to understand those things. So, you know, you heard the title of, you know, what can get you into, why don't, you know, we speak more effectively with C styles? Well, these are just some tips that we've created about, you know, things that may not come naturally to us when we're interacting with styles that are not the same as our own. So in this instance, we have our do's and don'ts. And with C styles, for some of us, we have to consciously remind ourselves to adjust, to do these things. But the good news is that if we were to make these types of adjustments, our C style colleagues tend to react in a positive way. They're more likely to want to engage with us. They're more likely to hear what we have to say. And in the end, we will typically be more successful in our interaction. So in the do this section, explain carefully. You know, we need to hear their questions, and we need to answer them with facts and details. We need to give them time to think and decide. The last thing you want to do is push them to make hasty decisions. Slow it down. For someone like myself, I do talk really fast. And you know, it's as simple as, remember, these adjustments that we ask ourselves to make are oftentimes brief and temporary. So it's almost like me telling myself, Christina, okay, you know, Carol's a C style, just take it down a notch, slow it down a bit, and then we can do it. And C styles, because they tend to be more reserved and they're not on the people-oriented bottom half of the model, they tend to be more formal. So we want to maintain that formality with them. We don't want to get too chatty. We don't want to crowd into their personal space. You know, you think about holiday parties. Well, holiday parties of the past, right? So you have those I styles who love to be the center of attention. You know, they might even start talking to their C style colleague, and they start invading their personal space because it's just very comfortable and natural. You know, personal space is a blur for I styles. And so they start to move very close to their C style, and the C style starts to move back. And it's almost like a dance. You just watch them kind of backing up until they hit the wall. So other things to just think about, things that may come naturally for us may feel less comfortable for your C style colleagues. So things that you may consider not doing. So pressuring them for immediate decisions. They want to understand the data and facts. You need to prove it to them. They need to process it. They need to think about it before they make decisions. You heard me say, you know, don't be too chatty or personal, kind of maintain that formality. Don't ignore their expertise. You know, they bring a lot of weight into the amount of time they put into becoming that expert in that style. So don't ignore it. and don't invade their personal space. So those are just some of the things that I'm highlighting. Was there anything you would add, Wilma?
Well, I do like the fact when we think about communicating with a C style, they like to be on top of the topic, right? And that is a gift. That's awesome. I went and bought a car with a C style, and I observed the C style. They had done so much pre-research that it was boring listening to the salesperson because the C person was saying, oh no, that's on page 25 of your flyer. You know, when we talk about, like, it was really important that they understood all of the details before buying a car. And I think what happens is that when we appreciate what the other style brings, it makes it so much easier. Like, I C is the lowest of my styles, and for me, when I make that shift and I just appreciate what the C style brings, it makes things better. And I think that when you talked about personal space, you know, that doesn't mean that C's are cold, but at work they want that you to honor that. But like at home, maybe not so much, right? They're human too.
Absolutely. And just referencing back to why we titled the webinar, Why Your Message to C Styles May Not Be as Effective, is because each DISC style has a more natural preference for types of questions. Obviously, we ask all questions, but C styles prefer to ask the why question. You know, why do we need to do that? Why is that step necessary in the process? I'm married to one, so I can definitely tell you why is his most common question. In fact, he uses it as an answer. Like, I'll say,
Inquiring
oh,
minds need to know, right?
exactly.
Inquiring minds, why would you like lunch? Why? Well, it's 12 o'clock. Why? Well, we're normally hungry at this time.
You sound like you're married to a C too.
I am. I'm married to an engineer, and it's great, right? I love it when the school forms come in because he actually doesn't skip anything. He answers every single solitary question. So when we're communicating remotely with a C style, remember emails. C styles, they like a more formal, detailed email. They don't want it riddled with mistakes. They want the punctuation there. And they want it logical, not logical A, D, F, C. They want it A, B, C, D. 1, 2, 3. When you're in a phone call and you had specific things that you are going to speak to them about in terms of your business, you could send them a little heads up. These are the things that we're going to talk about so that they can prepare, because preparation is really important for our Cs. In terms of virtual meetings, remember, they're going to sit back in a virtual meeting. So if that's the case, you may have to take time to figure out how you want to draw your C style out. But give them a heads up. They're happy to be sitting there listening, taking it in, and participating on their terms. But if you want to draw them in, you might want to give them a heads up to say, hey, at this next meeting, why don't you chair the meeting? So that they can prepare and be involved.
Right.
But answer all their questions.
The last thing you want to do is put them on the spot. That really makes your C styles uncomfortable. So
yes.
As much scheduling and preparation and information that they have up front, the more receptive and comfortable they want to be. And I love the fact that Wilma brought up, you know, make sure you dot your I's, you know, and cross your T's on your emails, because oftentimes when C styles see a mistake in your email, it's really hard for them to move on, you know, because it can be very irritating for them to find mistakes. So more than any other style, you want to make sure to double check your emails for errors before you send it. Phones and virtual meetings, it's not the preferred communication form for C styles, but again, we all adjust, right? You know, these are very general guidelines. You know, we're not, you know, saying that, oh, C styles can only communicate this way. There are, as Wilma said, you know, there are wonderful C styles that do public speaking and connect to you one-on-one. but we're talking about, natural styles. At the end of the day, a true C style may, if they have to do a lot of public speaking, if they have to do a lot of virtual meetings, they might go home and say, man, that was exhausting.
Yes, because that's a great point. All of this that we're talking about doesn't speak to their ability. It speaks to how much energy that we use. So our C styles, I just want to tell you, all the C's out there, I love your love of details. Like, we need more of that.
Yes, for those of us that don't focus on details, we admire what the other person has. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much, Wilma, for joining me today in my very
Thank
last
you.
webinar of the year. We wish you all and your loved ones health, peace, and joy, and we will see you in 2021. Have a great day.
Stay well.